Yeah, thank you. To start with, I would like to call upon Mr. Sharath. This is actually one of my personal questions which I wanted to ask him. I want to put this as part of this. So, Sharath sir, I remember you mentioning that when you actually first met Mr. Kishore and had a conversation around DPDPA, you were genuinely quite excited about it. Could you share with us what was it about that conversation or about DPDPA itself that really sparked that excitement for you?
Right. Thank you, Santosh. So, firstly, I would like to thank all the attendees. A lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much for taking your time to attend this session. I hope the session was useful and we were able to add value. A lot of things are planned ahead as well. After we have a very interesting demo as well. So, to answer your question, Santosh, I vividly sort of remember the conversation I had with Mr. Kishore. It was a long time back, but very long and insightful discussion. What really stood out for me was not just the regulatory aspect of DPDP, but also the fundamental shift it will bring to how businesses think about data. Right? He also spoke about how many companies have to revisit and possibly redesign their systems, right? So, how they collect the data, where they store the data, and how they will sort of use the data in the future. And that immediately sort of struck me as a very significant shift and not just a compliance requirement, right? And that's when it clicked to me that DPDP is not just a law, it's a business transformation. We also discussed how GDPR created massive ecosystem of advisory and compliance services across Europe. So the entire practices were sort of built around that. So that's where the real excitement came to me. Because if you look at India, we have seen similar inflection points in our case. I believe the introduction of GST was a game changer for a lot of chartered accountants. And the introduction of Companies Act 2013 was a game changer for company secretaries as well. So I genuinely believe the DPDP has the potential to be the next wave. It's the buzzword, right? So not just in terms of compliance, but also in terms of new advisory opportunities, new service lines, and new ways of engaging with our clientele. So for me, the excitement was twofold. One is the impact it will have on businesses. A lot of businesses have to sort of transform how they collect data, etc. Also, the opportunity it lies for us as professionals to evolve and lead this change. So, very, very interesting conversation. We were I still am very bullish about DPDP as such.
Thank you for that sharing. As I asked you immediately, shared your her perspective on that. Thank you. And next question, I would like to ask Archana on this. Archana, like we often hear that privacy is not a one-time compliance exercise, but an ongoing governance responsibility. In that context, what are the key challenges organizations face when it comes to privacy governance, and how can they actually embed this into their day-to-day operations?
Sure, Santosh. So, as you rightly mentioned, DPDPA is an operational compliance. It's not that we set up the policies, set up the compliance, and we go for surveillance audits. It doesn't work that way. So, it is a day-to-day practice that company, its employees, the way they interact with their customers, vendors, everything has to be taken into account, and all the employees, even the tools they use, everything has to follow the DPDPA. So practically, it is not that I have set up a compliance and it is done, sometime I'll review it. It doesn't work that way. So one of the major challenge here is understanding our data. So the biggest problem I can say is the organization, what they look at is they think that manually we do something and we can live with that. But if you think about data, it is very dynamic, right? Data is dynamic. That means, as Aruna and Sharath has already mentioned, everyday data changes, where it is stored changes. Though we have to save in OneDrive, the things might evolve. So we put in some other locations, even within OneDrive, some other locations, we provide extra access to members, and we forget to delete few records. So we think deletion has to be done, but we forget to delete. So the way the data nature always changes. So when we try to control it manually, inspecting 500 GB data, 1 TB data, 10,000 customers data manually, it is not at all an easy task, right? So that is where we have to have tools like data discovery agents, which you can see the demo shortly. Assurtiv demos, you can see where we can show data discovery agent, wherein it can connect to your systems, drives, local endpoints, it can connect, and it can tell you what kind of PII data is there, who has access, what is the meta information. So it doesn't collect the actual personal data, but it tells how risky data is there, which drive has risky data. So what measures, are you taking correct measures to that area? So that is one area we have to look at it. So we have, before even doing DPDPA, first we have to understand where our data is, how much PII we are dealing. That is the first question we have to think. The other area is consents, safeguards. If we think consents, it's not, if you, let's say, if it is customers we have, 1,000 customers we have, or vendors we have, if it is an educational instance, students and parents. So they all change over the period. So we have to take consent. And once we take consent, there is a possibility the data principal might say, I want to withdraw, right? Or they want to modify their preferences. Are we going to do all this through emails? Is it feasible? It's not that. So we should have systems in place, tools in place where we manage these consents, where we manage the audit trials of all this. So, and the last part is like monitoring. So we put the measures in place. We discovered the data, we know it, we put the measures in place, and we set up the systems. But it's continuous monitoring. That means every month, every 15 days or quarter, we should have review mechanisms, whether team is following that, right? And we should have dashboards. We have to have where the risk, where team is not at all following or adhering to that. We should have mechanisms to watch where we are going wrong, so that at any point of time, we are ready for, we know that we are safe at least. So when really an incident occurs, a breach occurs, so we need not panic. The company need not be stressful. So they know what is happening and all that. So they have enough data. So the major thing in DPDPA or any even GDPR, if we don't show accountability or proofs that we are putting genuine efforts to manage privacy or data protection, if we can't show, then the fines will be very high. If we are able to show our accountability, then we can work on the mitigation or the fines to reduce. So that is what I want to say, Santosh. So it's a day-to-day operations. It needs to be planned properly. I mean, Assurtiv kind of tools can help you really in a big way.
Thank you, Archana. That was very insightful walk through what we have. And I'm not leaving you. I have another question for you. I want to use your live experiences here. So it's like from a practical standpoint, I want to touch upon now where what does DPDP implementation typically look like for small and mid companies? Where should they realistically start, and how can they actually approach with this without it becoming too overwhelming for them?
Yeah. So Aruna ma'am also can answer to this question, but I'll give my inputs and you can add to your points. So even small to mid companies, like large companies, everyone is same under the law. So everyone has to adopt, whether it is small or big or medium. So if we take the systematic approach with the platform or Assurtiv or a systematic approach we have to follow, we have 4 steps. Step 1, first one, gap assessment and understanding the company's privacy landscape. Privacy landscape means how many data subjects they deal with, data principals they deal with, what are the processes involved in it, and how many consents they need to take, vendor life cycles, what are the current level of maturity in security and privacy. Like that, we have to understand very good amount of privacy landscape the company is. Then we will know really where the risky areas are, where they are going wrong, what measures we have to suggest. That is the brings us to the next step called privacy governance setup, where we work on policies, procedure setup, controls, recommendations, and various different areas in the governance setup so that now they can follow that in their company. But the major step where the company has to embrace this is through implementation. We recommend a lot of things, we set up everything, but in, as I mentioned, in day-to-day operations, they have to follow. So for that, the platform even helps in different workflows and also can support in control measures and all. But the implementation actually lies at the heart of companies' operations. So coming to once the implementation is done and everything, it's a continuous operations and monitoring. So wherein regularly they have to work on adhering to these things. It is not too complex when we think we will, but if the system is really good, the governance setup is done properly, it becomes like a process that company, how they are following other business process, they will follow this business processes. So it becomes, and they will have dashboards, live records to see where they are at any point of time. Yeah. Ma'am, you want to add any points?
Yeah. Aruna ma'am, do you want to add any points to this?
Yeah, so I think yes, Archana ma'am has covered all the things, but from legal standpoint, I would like to just mention that the penalties are not different for small or medium businesses. So these penalties are same for all the business types. Whoever is collecting personal data and not protecting it safely, and if the leakage is intentional, non-intentional, by hacker or by the employees, it doesn't matter. If the damage is happening, and if the damage is happening to the people, okay, it will be leading to penalties. Okay, so penalties are same for all the businesses, but still, DPB, the data protection board, is having discretion on the penalties to be imposed, based on the severity of the impact. Okay, so how many data principals are getting impacted, how they are getting impacted, is it a financial fraud, or some psychological means impacting any individual psychology, or status or reputation. So the all the impact will be considered by the data protection board, and how many individuals are getting impacted, that will be also measured. And whether the data fiduciary is having proper security safeguards or not, that will be also considers how many security safeguards are there. And whether data this data fiduciary has shown the interest or shown the intention to protect the personal data or not, that would be also considered. Their regular audit reports would be checked later. Okay, so those kind of things would be considered by the data protection board, and then they will be imposing the penalty. So law is same as per the article 14 of the Constitution of India: equality before law and equal protection of the law. Okay, so everyone has to take care of this legal compliance, and need to protect the data by all means. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Aruna ma'am. Now, this particular question, I have a special question for Mr. Sharath. Sir, after listening to the discussions around the DPDP implementation timelines and considering our very familiar Indian tendency to push compliances to the last minute, do you think DPDP is something organizations can realistically afford to leave it until the last minute? Or is this one of those areas where delayed start could actually become a serious risk?
Right. So I don't think it is a last minute approach will work for DPDP. And in fact, it could be quite risky. Both Aruna ma'am and Archana ma'am has, of course, spoken about multiple stages, right? Unlike many traditional compliances, DPDP, in fact, is not a one-time activity or a filing, right? It's a multi-stage implementation process. As the other panelists have mentioned, it starts with assessing where the data lies, how do you collect, process, identify the gaps and the risks, drafting policies, implementing consent management systems, those in place, and putting in a place security measures, training of employees, and in many cases, periodic audits, right? So this is not something which you can switch on overnight. So it's a step-by-step process. Also, for many businesses, this may require sort of restructuring, as I mentioned, how they collect, process the data, and it could impact their existing systems as well. So if you start early, the better it is. And naturally, all of these steps takes quite a significant amount of time. In fact, we have done our own DPDP assessment since we've been operational since for the last 10 years, right? Of course, the assessment took time thanks to Assurtiv's tool. The time was short-lived, but the process as such to identify where the data lies, etc., right? For internally for us, that took a long time. But thanks to the tool, we were able to complete it. Now we have a report. Now we have completed our first step. So also the other important risk is the compliance risk. It is not just the compliance risk. It is also a reputational risk for a lot of businesses. So in my view, the earlier you start, the better it is naturally. And the longer you delay, the higher the risk. Unlike some other compliances, right? The cost of getting it wrong is significantly more than cost of getting it right. So you will have to start early. Of course, as you mentioned, that's a tendency of a lot of Indian businesses or business owners in general to postpone. But because it takes such a long time, just from your data discovery to having process in place, drafting of policies, training your employees, all of this could take significantly longer. My guess is for a business which is about 5 to 10 years old, it could easily take about 3 to 6 months, right? So having that in mind, it's always better to start early, adapt, and be absolutely compliant, right? So that's my take.
Thank you for that. Actually, it actually gives a good idea for people, and that was a great discussion. And we actually covered strategy, challenges, as well as real world perspective.